What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
Where we share our love for spooky things and talk horror through the lens of human behavior, i.e. the psychology of it all. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
So today is a special treat. 'Tis the season, y'all, because we are talking about the newest installment in the Halloween chain, Halloween Kills.
Listen, folks, please. The boogeyman is at large. He's got no choice but to emerge. He is an apex predator. When he surfaces, there will be no pause. There will be no empathy. This ends when Michael is dead. Michael Myers will be executed tonight, and it will not go without witness. We need all of you. Evil dies tonight.
Yeah.
Woo, 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 woo.
So exciting. So, of course, we're going to talk all things Halloween Kills. And we have to obviously go back and reference the OG 1978 version of Halloween. Well, the only true version. And then the hashtag retcon of it all, the 2018 into this sequel, Halloween Kills, and we have so much to talk about. But before we get into that, y'all, and I don't know why I'm saying y'all so much. I think it's because I'm in Virginia. I've just been in too long.
It's the south of it all.
It's the south of it all. My roots are just showing. But before we get into everything that is Halloween Kills, we have our first ever talking horror guest. Brian, do you want to introduce this fabulous guest?
Yeah, sure. So I'm producer Brian. This is our first guest. This is very exciting. I hope this works. But we did not skimp on guestery. We have an incredible human being, an artist, a Halloween lover, and a spooky movie connoisseur. We're joined by Matthew Woods.
Yay!
Hello, friends. I'm very honored to be here and honored to be your first guest.
So exciting.
This is so exciting.
Yes.
So I'll start off with the first question. We'll definitely talk about how spectacular of an artist you are. We'll talk about everything. But to start off, what is your relationship to these Halloween movies?
Wow. How long do you have? Is this going to be like a 3-hour thing? Or,
Yeah.
Totally fine.
So I would say that Halloween 1978 is probably my favorite scary movie. I mean, I vacillate between the original Halloween and the first Scream. The first Scream is what got me into scary movies in the first place. But of course, like, where does one go from there? Back to the originals. I think that John Carpenter's original Halloween is masterful in a very artistic sense. And it is what I will first and foremost present as like, this is my favorite movie. It's the artsy one of the horror movies.
For
and
sure.
like also Scream because it's really fun. So yeah, I would say that my relationship is that I watch it every Halloween on Halloween while I'm carving a pumpkin and getting ready for the inevitable party that's happening at my house.
Yes. Wait, but can we stop since you mentioned pumpkins? Because I'm just now noticing your background. I just need the audience needs an explanation of what is happening behind you.
So I'm sitting in my art studio, and I have 3 of those plastic blow mold trick-or-treat pumpkins with lights in them, and then one over here, actual pumpkin next to it, which is waiting to be carved on Halloween when I watch Halloween.
Also, we can't not talk about the wonderful sweater.
Oh yeah, look.
Oh, I didn't
Oh,
even.
that's perfect.
Yeah, it's a Michael Myers knit sweater.
Oh, it's actually knit?
Yeah, it's actually knit.
Oh, that's really cool.
We have to find these guys. We need matching ones.
I'll send you the link later. I think they're made by Middle of Beyond. They do a whole bunch of ugly sweaters for all seasons, and they have a deep horror line.
Yeah. Well,
There goes my money.
I mean, truly, if not to just spend it all in every Halloween store. So you mentioned, well, Brian mentioned that you are an artist, an incredible artist. I have been following you since Brian has shown me your work. It is absolutely incredible. Can you speak a little bit about how you got into artistry, this specific artistry that you're in? Can you give us your Instagram? Tell us everything.
Right. So I have always been, I was an artsy kid. I've been artistic my whole life. I studied both theater and fine art in college. And coming out of that, realized that I wasn't so good at acting, but I was much better at the fine art stuff, and leaned a lot into that into my adult life. Most of what I do is a little macabre, maybe a little creepy, a little other, but it's also very like approachable, kind of cute. It like, I always want everything to straddle that line between cute and creepy. I want it to be approachable and fun, just like I like the holiday. So I try and bring a little bit of that sensibility to everything that I do. Most of my original work centers around a serial character that I came up with named Pumpkinhead, who is a famed horror monster that I love. And he pretty much has this like Jack Skellington way of like trying to do everyday things or celebrate other holidays, but always kind of like mucks it up and brings like a weird, creepy aesthetic to everything. And it's not me, but it isn't me. Like Pumpkinhead is his own entity, but he's also like kind of me.
He's a part of you. That's totally fine.
Yeah. Truly a part of me.
Yeah. So you have something interesting going on your Instagram during the month of October. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So my Instagram is Hallow Woods, Hallow like Halloween and Woods like Matt Woods, my last name. I am participating in Inktober, which is a drawing prompt. There's 31 prompts, one for each day. And I have done a series of little 4-inch by 4-inch original ghosts based around each of those prompts. And I am auctioning them off every day, starting at noon or 1 if I'm late. Or
8 p.m. if Instagram goes down.
Yeah, that day. It's like, you are ruining my day, Instagram. I'm supposed to be selling artwork right now.
No, that's incredible. I literally was the recent one that I've reposted a lot of your works just on the fly. But
Thank you.
one that I really enjoyed that you've done this Inktober, it was one with Wednesday Addams, because I'm obsessed.
Oh, yeah.
Family. And I did not realize that you were actually auctioning them off, because I would have fought everyone on Instagram to have that specific picture, because I thought this is fantastic. I just love, and I also love how you described your artwork, because it's something that's kind of cutesy, but also fun and a part of your love for Halloween and spooky things, which is why you're all here. And I think that's a perfect way to describe it, because when I look at it, it's like, that's exactly the vibe that I get. It's like Pumpkinhead is very much more approachable. Your Pumpkinhead. Yeah. You know, not the spookier things, but
well, so, Nikisha,
yes,
Jamie and I have a gift for you when we see you next week for the first time. We got you a Pumpkinhead Halloween countdown calendar illustrated by Matthew Woods.
Oh my gosh, you're the best.
I'm dead. The way
we have it, I was surprised that you like physically have it, because I was like, wait, that was in our kitchen. Where did that come from?
Oh yeah,
I was really confused.
No, that's fantastic. I'm literally going to like frame each and every month and just be like, here we go. We're going to have a wall of like Matthew Wood art in my house. I'm very excited.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I know Brian already asked you like about your favorite scary movie, but because and y'all stop me if y'all have other questions too, but I was thinking about this on my 10-hour drive to Virginia. Because we are a podcast that talks about psychology and human behavior, I was wondering, what horror movie do you think that you could survive, that you would make the best human behavior decisions in, and that you would actually come out on top as far as your skill sets and such? Which movie do you think?
Oh, man. That's a really good question. I don't think it would be a slasher.
Okay.
I'm a good runner, but that never saves you in a slasher.
As we will discuss.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's like there's like the meme that goes around of Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees talking to each other, and Jason is saying to Michael, like, "Oh, I just wait till they trip. They always trip." I think I would survive a like possession style movie.
So like a Conjuring moment.
Yeah. I think that sort of thing doesn't really scare me very much. And what kind of ghost wants to try and scare someone that doesn't really bother?
That is very true. Yeah, we talk a lot about people who are possessed in those movies are the ones that are the most vulnerable. So that's a great way to kind of combat that. It's like, I mean, these things don't bother me. So move on to the next, there's other plenty of sad, people who are.
I'm a really heavy sleeper. So bump in the night is like, whatever.
Fantastical. Okay. Well, are we getting into this? Are we going into the Halloween?
I think we should. Begin.
Time to Halloween.
It's time.
Gosh. Guys, let me roll up my sleeves and then let's get into it. So I'm just going to give the stats, and then we're just going to all have a huge discussion about our feelings. So, of course, we said that we're mainly focusing on the latest release that came out this weekend, Halloween Kills, which is the direct sequel. But going back, we watched the original Halloween. It was, again, 1978, directed and scored by John Carpenter and co-written with producer Deborah Hill. It stars Donald Pleasence, Nick Castle, and Jamie Lee Curtis in her acting debut. Fantastical job. Yay, Jamie Lee. We love her. We stand for her. Going on to Halloween, retconning all the way through, because this is actually the 11th installment, Halloween 2018. It was directed by David Green and written by Green, Jeff Frodley, and Danny McBride. Jamie Lee and Nick Castle reprised their role along with a stuntman named James Jude Courtney playing Michael Myers as well with Nick Castle. And additional casting includes Judy Greer, Andy Matichak, and Will Patton. Then we skip on to Halloween Kills. Obviously, just came out 2021, the 12th installment in the series, but just the third one in this timeline. Directed by David Green again, and written by Green, Danny McBride, and Scott Teems, with everyone reprising their roles, along with some reprising roles from the OG, which was really nice to see. I'm sure we'll talk about all of those entries and how they weave those things together. And my impatient self literally saw one character and was like, wait, how do I know him from the first movie? Let me go back to the first one and then try to find the scene where he's in and then try to connect the two. Even though literally 5 minutes later in the movie, they tell you exactly who the But I was like, no, I have to figure this out before, because I don't know if they're going to tell me. I need to know now. So
really sleuthing.
I was on the hunt, okay, to have everything there and ready, only because we have a guest too. So I was like, let me at least kind of know what I'm talking about. But so, Matthew, we do a fun game, a 2-minute plot summary.
What's the plot?
Brian, do you want to get into that?
Yeah. So what we typically do is we give somebody a 2-minute timer to describe the plot of the movie. So I think what we're going to do here is whoever wants to play, totally fine, doesn't matter who, you're going to get 1 minute and one movie. So you have to describe the plot of the movie. Spoilers are totally fine. Go from beginning to end, the plot of that movie. Does anyone want to play?
We'll let our
Play a
guests
game?
we'll let our guests pick first, and then we'll pick after.
I want the original, obviously.
Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes. Okay. And then I'll let everybody know when like your 30 seconds is here, when your minute is up. And then the next person has to like tag team in. So when I tell Matt that his minute is up, it doesn't matter if he's 1/5 of the way through the movie. You start the next one. So, so who wants to do Halloween 2018?
I mean, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay. And then Jamie, do you want to do Halloween Kills in a minute?
Sure. I know we just watched it, but like I'm already trying to rack my brain to remember everything.
Totally. So are we all set to play a little game?
Hit me.
Yeah, let's
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go for it, Matt.
Once upon a time in 1978, there was a lonely teenage girl named Laurie Strode. She was hanging out with her friends. They're all like smoking pot and talking about boys. And she's like, I have to carry my books. And they are all babysitting the night of Halloween. There's a killer on the loose. I forgot that's how it starts. A killer gets out of a mental institution. There we go. And he is roaming around the town of Haddonfield, Illinois, and he is stalking people, picking up masks and knives, getting ready for the big night. All the girls go to their various places to babysit.
15 seconds.
Oh, they all have sex, drink beer, smoke pot, get killed. Jamie Lee Curtis comes face to face with him. I mean, Laurie Strode comes face to face with him. She tells the kids to run. She hides in a closet. He smashes into the closet. She gets him with a coat hanger, and he gets shot by the doctor, Loomis.
And Nikisha, go.
Retcon, 40 years later, we see that he is now escaped again. He is looking for Laurie. She is held up in a house. She's traumatized by all the events. She has all of these mental illnesses because of the trauma that she experienced. She has like a daughter who has another daughter, and she's trying to protect them. So now like the granddaughter of it all is the one that has the friends smoking the pot and having the sex and doing the things. And Michael comes and tries to kill all of her friends. And then he ends up finding Laurie, and Laurie is trying to gather all of her family together so that she can protect him, but to no avail. Even though he gets into the house, she tries to shoot him and then fire up her whole house, burn up her whole house.
5, 4.
And then he's dead.
Jamie.
Okay. Continuing directly from the fire, firefighters go to the house. They try to put out the fire. Michael Myers murders all the firefighters. In real life, firefighters really don't like that. The folks are celebrating the 40th anniversary of Michael being arrested. And these are all the people from the OG film. There's also like a brief retcon for some reason, for a very brief second, of the cop who apparently was there when he got away, to show what happens immediately after. Whatever, no one cares. A bunch of people do a bunch of incredibly stupid things and all get killed. The entire town of Haddonfield, Illinois ends up at this hospital. They get into some kind of rage,
15.
and this guy accidentally kills himself, one of the escaped people. Laurie realizes that the world doesn't revolve around her. Michael Myers murders everybody in the town, and then Laurie Strode's daughter dies, and then I think that's it. They're all looking out windows.
Oh, that's fun.
They're all just looking out windows.
Yeah.
And that's the plot.
I think that was a pretty bang up job of all.
Yeah, round of applause for all
You
of
all
us.
did
That was
an amazing job. My favorite part, my truly favorite part, was that Matt set up what teenagers do, and you all just went with that. That was the threat. I love that. That was so good.
Oh gosh. So I guess
Ooh.
let's just go one by one and talk about our initial thoughts with this movie in relation to watching it all back to back and some of the things you liked, some of the things you didn't like, but then we'll specifically dive into the mental health of it all. So just hold on to that. So Matthew, let's talk about your original thoughts on Halloween Kills.
So I'm going to preface this by saying I love a horror movie that surprises me. And this movie surprised me. It was not what I expected it to be. That being said, I also didn't love it. I feel like it felt like a sequel. You know what I mean? Like I would never choose to watch Halloween Kills as a standalone movie. Not only because it's a direct continuation of the last one, but because the plot felt very thin to me and they cranked up the violence to make it interesting, which was a good time. It was like a wild, bloody romp. And there is something to be said for that when you're talking about horror movies. But it felt like we did almost a loop in the story and ended up right back where we were, with a few minor pins added.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Jamie?
Yeah, I feel similarly. I mean, when we rewatched 2018 and then this one, I forgot how violent 2018 was. And then this kind of like continued to really amp it up. It kind of felt similar to Rob Zombie's Halloweens, which are also very violent. But while I guess I'm glad that they finally kind of acknowledged that there was this trauma that occurred in this town and like how that impacted the town. It's also weird because this is literally the first time that the town has ever acknowledged it, or like that they've ever put a spotlight on the town acknowledging it, which seemingly comes out of nowhere. So I wasn't crazy about that. But also something that I think is interesting that they do with this movie, and I was listening to another podcast about it, but like the idea that it's not really all about Laurie, that it's more that like Michael Myers is just like a murderer who has no remorse and is like incredibly strong. Like it's not about this face off between Laurie and Michael Myers, even though that's what everything is gearing you up to believe, that like it's really not all about her, that once she realizes that the other psychiatrist was just trying to bring them back together because like everyone else seems to believe this is true. Laurie believes it's true. Her entire life is basically like hinging upon this idea that she has to gear herself up for this final face off. And then it happens and like life continues and there's so much talk about like him ending up back at the hospital that she's at. And ultimately, like, he's not going there. He's going back to his house. So it's really interesting when there's this realization of like, oh no, like it's not this like big face off between us two. It's just like, this is just what he is. And I'm hoping that like Halloween Ends takes us to a place where it's like, let's just get this guy and like take all the other stuff out of it. But yeah, I'm very curious to see where it continues to go. But I wasn't too crazy about this one.
Yeah. Brian, go ahead.
So as we all may or may not know, I have a huge hole in my movie knowledge is horror movies. So like I've been really catching up, watching all this. I had never seen a Halloween movie until Jamie and I watched the original one during quarantine. I have never seen any other Halloween movie until Jamie and I watched 2018 last week and then Halloween Kills. So I know nothing of H2O. I know nothing of Halloween 2 or
You've never seen H2O.
No, I
That's
read
my favorite of the franchise. Well, no,
Yeah.
I already said the first one is. I can't.
Yeah, I know.
No more retcon. There's enough retcon in this movie.
So I went into this not knowing the other versions of Laurie. I recognize that I understand the main plot threads of the other ones, like the brother aspect, all that stuff. But obviously, we're not talking about that. So watching this is like, and I've never seen the Rob Zombie one. So watching this is like brand new to me. I love the original one. I mean, it's just like it's magical, and it's like. There's something very magical about it in a both like a history perspective of movie making, a history of horror movies, but also like if you don't know anything about like the importance of that movie, it's still awesome. So like there's something magical about that. The second Halloween 2018 surprised me. I loved it. I thought it was a spectacular movie. I thought everything about it was really, really great. The performances, how they pulled from the first one, and like how these characters would potentially deal with it in a more contemporary way of telling that story. I thought this one was very interesting. And I think the concepts that they went through in this one are incredible. I love the idea of like how this trauma affects the town. I think it's super interesting for Laurie to take a back seat in this one and then kind of see how this is a very narcissistic movie. Everyone believes that their trauma, Jamie talked about this a little bit. Everyone believes that their trauma is the important trauma. And everyone thinks that, or they believe that Laurie is the queen of trauma and they're like worried about her or whatnot. I think that's super interesting, and how all of them in that hospital, like this mob mentality, how does the concept of like how fear affects all of these people? I just think that's so interesting as like a secondary follow-up to what we got in 2018. I just don't think that, pun intended, it was executed that well to get those points across. But I still I liked it more thinking back on what the themes are than like how it presented all these things. The one thing I was most happy about this movie is my biggest concern with Halloween 2018 was that I didn't know what happened to that little boy. And then he was on the TV giving an interview, and that relieved everything for me, because he is such a delight in that second one. Well, he has to watch his babysitter die, but he's like, oh, he was the funniest thing. Like, anyway, that's my thoughts. I'm happy I know what happens to that little boy.
I remember, just to piggyback, I remember watching the 2018 Halloween in theaters and just everyone exploding every time that boy came on. It was just like a great time for him to be on the screen and just be yelling at the boyfriend to be like, you need to run, but I'm not going to run. I'm not going to try to help.
Oh, also, these two movies have my favorite lines of all time.
Wait. Can I guess one of them? Of them?
Of course.
Okay. For the Halloween Kills movie, because this got me, shoot. Look at that sassy tackle.
So that's the Halloween Kills one. That's my favorite line of Halloween Kills, the sassy tackle. My favorite line in Halloween is, I got peanut butter on my penis.
Oh, man. I got peanut butter on my penis.
Because he doesn't. It's on his pants.
Yes. He says it like 3 more times. Why?
Is that a thing? Oh, but rest in peace, though.
No, the second he opened that door and was just like, oh, what's happening out here? I'm just like, you know what? You're going to get blood on your penis,
deserve this.
Yeah.
Certain trajectory, though, or like the ones that are going to die. Like the minute that they say the first thing they say, you're like, oh, you're going to be dead like 45 minutes into the movie. Okay. I don't need to be invested in you, which is pretty sad. I share the same sentiments as you guys. I feel like Matthew said, it was nice to be surprised, because I was very happy the connection between the Ronnie, and that is the granddaughter's boyfriend's son, like Ronnie, who in the first movie was bullying Tommy, but then they become friends when they get older. And so I don't know. It was just nice to have like that connection of like the granddaughter and all of her friends. Like that's the connection with the friends in the 1978 movie. But I feel like the approach of having the townspeople is kind of like a little bit of a cop out. It's like, we want to make 2 more movies. How can we stretch out these 2 movies? So let's have a thing where we just bring back people so we can have this moment of like nostalgia and you kind of figure out what's going on with the people 40 years later, as they explain every 3 seconds, along with Evil Dies Tonight, which if I hear that line one more time, I'm literally going to actually kill myself like that other lady. And the random freaking gun, he slaps her wrist and then she shoots herself. What the fuck? Anyway.
That was just a lucky break
I
on
want
his part.
Oh my God. I want to get into, I really want to get into all of the kills that how and why.
Jamie yelled at the TV. Well, we did it on Peacock.
I wanted Brian to describe my state watching this movie.
She doesn't do this. We got it on Peacock because that was our only opportunity, and I am all for going to the movie theaters. We had to watch it, and she yelled at the TV. That doesn't happen. She literally oh my gosh, I got scared. I thought I got scared. That was the scariest part of the movie for me.
Yeah, that's it. Jamie, I was the same way, like Cancer Tribe, just yelling at the screen because the kills of it all. And it's like a lot. It's so farcical too, because it's like, at least in the 2018, it's like, okay, we know that they're trying to be like serious with these kills. And like the ones in Halloween Kills literally were just like, they decided what is the dumbest decision that these people can make to die. And that's what we're going to go with. Every single one. And it's just like, that all these town people are going to die at some point, but like, there's no investment truly in them unless you are recalling the 40 years later. And so then like, even if they are dying, you're like, oh, that's sad that they lived 40 years and then now they're dead again because of this guy. But there's just no true like emotional connection to anything that is happening. And again, like I said, I just feel like this movie was just because they want to set up the ending, but they needed something to like do before then. And so they were like, well, let's just throw all the town people in there because there's no one else that's going to be returning to the last movie because
we did get Big John and Little John in this one. And I just need to point out that Big John and Little John are now some of my favorite characters in all the Halloween 3 movies I've seen.
Isn't Dewey from Mad TV?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Every time it's like, look what I can do. Die.
They introduced so many townspeople just to kill them.
To kill them all.
Like, I want to know more about the Beaujolais Nouveau Cheez-It couple with the flying thing. The drone. Yeah. Like, what was their night up to?
Which is just like,
why was she flying that drone? Like, what was happening?
I forgot about them until this moment. Honestly, I would have rather a movie just like Cats, where you go to every house, they like tell you a little bit about the family, and then
then Michael shows up,
and then they die.
Oh my gosh!
So the drone inside in this movie left me thinking like, what? Why? In 2018, the pudding bowl at the high school dance that her phone gets thrown into left me, what? Why? Why wasn't it just punch? Why was it pudding?
Oh, that's such a good point.
Like, both of these movies had a very clear, like, what is happening here? Who
going on? Who decided? Who was the one who said pudding?
And they were very obscure things.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's get into skills. Sorry, I was going to just say, Jamie, she was hot about it, and I was going to say, just go into it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm hot. I'm ready. I'm salty in the attractive way, but also like I'm so annoyed. Okay, so everyone's trauma, like this is where I'm going to start talking about the mental health stuff with, I guess my one exception is like, there's no fucking way that anybody's kid would be able to leave the hospital when their grandma got stabbed to like go try to kill the murderer. Like the fact that she was able to leave, that her mom let her go, is outrageous. But separately, like the idea that the trauma, like that they are so wrapped up by the trauma that they're like actively seeking out Michael, and then like all end up in like shenanigans that get them killed. Like, what was the point of having the nurse get killed almost in the same way that she avoided getting killed the original time, with like Michael climbing on the car and pulling her out? I was like, was that like, okay, cool, you know, doing your homage to the old movie, but like, it's reinforcing their belief, which happens to be wrong, that like they think that they're the center of the narrative, but they're only the center of the narrative because they put themselves in that position. And if they just decided to like seek shelter or not look for him in that way by themselves without enough support, then none of this would have happened. And so it's like infuriating to me that then like they see the kids who are playing on the swings. They're like, let's get out. Let's one person get out. And like, why not go in a group? Like, haven't you all? It's also infuriating because they've all experienced this trauma that has bonded them. So you would think that with time they would understand, or even from that experience, that they would understand like how it all works. I mean, that's less of a trauma thing and more of just like, these are people doing stupid things, but it just makes me so mad. But like, I think it's because of the way that they've like processed this trauma and feel like that they are these integral pieces that are connecting them back to Michael Myers, that like that in turn also leads to their demise. But like, the reality is, the viewer, is that actually they just all made a bunch of like really poor decisions and mistakes. And if they avoided his like path to his house, that they would not have succumbed to those fates. I like, that's the only intersection that I see. And so it's just really interesting how they like, because it's really up until the end, I guess, when the other escapee dies, that like the town, somehow the message is, you know, throughout the town as a whole, that they realize that the mistake was made telepathically. But yeah, it's like nobody realizes that if they all just didn't do what they were what their trauma was like motivating them to do in that moment, that they would have been safe. And it's just very interesting. And I don't even know if that's like in line with how trauma, I don't know if trauma would lead you to then like operate against your instincts in those situations, because it seems like their instincts should have told them to like not do those things, but they continue to put themselves in harm's way.
Some people never learn.
Some people.
Just like death after death. And the fact, like you said, Jamie, they're not moving in groups as well. It's like, let me just one by one isolate myself in a high stress situation and just let me see what happens. I don't have any kind of like, you know, weapons on me. Because even when the woman, when they were all in the car and they were trying to warn the kids at the park, like, did she have anything in her hand? No, she's just like, go kids, go home. And there you are, just like ripe for the picking of just death. So, sorry, Brian, you're going to say something?
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. So a couple things. The juxtaposition of the characters understanding and knowing the high stakes of the situation did not match some of their actions. Like, the point of this movie is they know what can happen. That's why this mob breaks out, because they're all aware of the stories and all of that. But a lot of their actions, at least the individuals, didn't kind of match that. I like the idea that I think this movie is trying to say that like your fear gets you in, like the fear of these things led them. The woman died the same way that she almost died in the first one, like all of that. And I totally understand that. So I guess my question to all of you is like, how do you think this movie handled the trauma of the individual versus the trauma of the group? Because clearly this movie is trying to make a statement and a point about an individual's trauma versus like the group's trauma. Did that come across to you? Did you feel that way? We can go around the circle, but that was just like, to me, that was the fascinating concept about this, because I don't think I've ever seen a horror movie where they're really trying as hard to really break down that aspect of things, like that group trauma, that town trauma. Like,
I just want to say really quickly, and then you all can talk about that. But in that mob mentality, I think they failed because it was just like sheep being led to the slaughter, and there was no kind of actual plan that was happening. It was just inevitable. Like the audience knows that all of them are going to die because they're just making stupid decisions and just going
and kill the beast.
Yes, exactly. And to your point about movies not focusing on the group as a whole, I think what made Midnight Mass work was the fact that they took the time individually to go through all of these different characters, and then you get into the drama of it all and the group as a whole focusing on the trauma and their inevitable demise. Spoiler alert for those who hadn't watched Midnight Mass, but do that because it's great. But I think that is a good example of a horror miniseries, whatever the case may be, that was focusing on the traumas of a group and how they are trying to do that. And this movie, it was just, they threw it in there and there was no like individual, they weren't talking about the individual traumas. It was just like a whole group moving as a herd and then all being led to the slaughter. So Jamie or Matthew on that.
So this is actually not the first time in the Halloween franchise that the town of Haddonfield has responded with a mob to group trauma. In Halloween 4, it's almost the same scenario. Michael Myers is on the loose. It's not Tommy Doyle who grabs the baseball bat, but there's a baseball bat with a name etched in it. I can't remember what the name is, but it's the same bat in this movie. He grabs it from behind the bar and he leads a mob to go and find Michael Myers in the town. Spoiler, they end up killing a bunch of innocent people thinking they got Michael Myers. Granted, they are dressed the same as Michael Myers for Halloween because they know the stories. But it was, I understood the homage to a movie in the franchise that we're retconning, we're referencing, but pretending like wasn't a part of this already.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. And as far as like the individual traumas and the individual stories, I always think of this quote that I heard on a podcast called Welcome to Night Vale, where they say, "Death is only the end if you think the story is about you." And all of these people that were led to the slaughter, the story wasn't about them. And as far as trying to say that the story isn't about Laurie Strode either is kind of ridiculous to me because it is about her. Like, I don't buy that. I know they're like putting her in a back seat, but like, you don't think we're going to get a huge Laurie Michael showdown in Halloween Ends twist. The story is about them. It always has been, and it is going to be again. We're just like doing a loop until we get there, which is what bothered me most about this movie.
Jamie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like mad that I don't remember the other ones that have since been retconned, because I was like, I remember the like Laurie Strode's daughter or something being the targeted victim, whose name is also Jamie. Important to say. But I can't remember anything else other than I think they had like a psychic connection. Maybe that was like the 5th one or the 6th one. Yeah, I should revisit those. But I don't know if I had a point other than referencing Jamie from the original lines. I forget what all the original questions were.
Well, let's just get into like Michael Myers mentally, because a lot of the question is floating around like, why did he choose Laurie in the first place? And why is he going back to his house and people not thinking that, he's actually trying to find Laurie? And then there's a question posed in the 2018 one, I think of along the lines, is Michael Myers killing like randomly, or does he have any kind of subconscious of like who he's actually going after? And that's what the doctors are trying to figure out, for some reason, instead of just recognizing him as a killer. They're like, but why is he doing this? Like, does he have a trigger, or is it just anyone in his path he's just like mowing down? So any thoughts about Michael mentally, like, and what his motivations are, I guess, for why he's killing.
In 2018, he doesn't kill a baby. He stops,
that's
looks
right,
at the baby, and he keeps going. He consciously chooses not to do it. And then in this one, in the flashback scene to 1978, he doesn't kill Lonnie on the sidewalk, the little kid who's cowering in fear. So other than those two, he pretty much kills everybody, dogs included.
Well, he also kills the third kid.
Oh yeah, the kids who go to the big and little John's house, and then they're on the swing set.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is another interesting thing. I'm wondering if it, but also I'm just throwing it out there. That's the only kid that was wearing a mask of the three of them. Because he holds up the costume.
Right.
Oh, so maybe he was like confused.
He's like, oh no, what did I do?
I didn't know it was a kid under there.
No, that's fascinating. That I forgot about that in 18. It's interesting because if I may, I think that it's very interesting because I also believe that these movies are presenting Michael in a very interesting way in that he's going home. Like he is brought to Laurie's house by Dr. Loomis's like student. Like he's kind of forced off of his path going home to Laurie's house, and he goes in and murders them. And then in this one he's going home as well, and like people happen to be in his path. And I'm not saying that like I do not know or not if he has a vendetta against her. But they put all these movies about about Michael's revenge against them, or like not killing them yet. But like it's really a story about their revenge against him on the trauma that he posed to them. And we definitely in Halloween Ends getting that showdown between him and Laurie. And it's going to be spectacular. And like, we're all going to love it. And like, that's going to go down in history as like one of those scenes that like is wonderful. And I do think they're setting up it. There's really setting us up for it in a positive way, because like her character has been so well thought out, at least in these. But like, so I kind of end with this, like, do you think when he kills her daughter, she's literally standing in his spot, like looking out the window, like, and obviously this is going to become even more about more revenge because of what he just did to that family. But like, do you think, sorry, I think of Dear Evan Hansen waving through the window. Do you think that he is, what am I trying to say? Do you think that Michael knew who that person, I mean, I guess he did because he saw it in the second one. Like, I don't know what I'm really asking here. So my question is like, did he kill her because she was in front of the window? If she wasn't there, would he have hunted her out? Or like, was that just a nice scenario for him to like get his revenge while standing by the window, if that makes sense?
He's like, oh, how convenient. Stab.
Yeah, I don't know. Does that, I don't know if that makes sense or doesn't make sense, but do you know where my head is kind of in like, just like bringing these things up?
So that room that she's standing in is his sister's room, where he killed his sister before and stood at the window. Mm-hmm. He also kills the cop in the 1978 flashback in front of the same window, doing the same thing.
Yes.
So I imagine he would kill anyone if they were standing there.
Protecting that window.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Twist. This is a love story about Michael Myers and Michael Myers looking at himself in the window. I think he would kill anyone if they were there or in the house or in his path or except for a baby and one kid.
Yeah, it's so interesting too. Like, Brian, you bring up that point because now I'm thinking about like he literally is just killing everyone in his path to go home. And if nobody was around him and he just got home and no one was in the house, like, would these people still be alive? Like, he is at home now. What is he wanting to do? Just stay there and stare out the window until he grows old. Like, what is the end? What the end game is? I mean, he's already old, and also, how is he recovering?
I bet he's hunky. Does everyone else think he's hunky?
Oh, most certainly.
We saw like a glimpse, like a hot
like
second.
that stubble. Like he's jacked in 2018 when the podcasters are talking to him. Like, oh, I also saw you can see the knitting needle scar in his neck that she put in 78. That was
going to say
cool.
He's got the one eye from the hanger.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Like it's pretty. He's
also burnt too.
Dudes
like,
with scars are hot.
Halloween Kills. He's burnt from the fire as well. So it's just like, Freddy Krueger all in one. It's just you can't. But like, also, how is he healing from these wounds? Like, he's been shot, he's been stabbed. Where is he going? Like, he's just going home. And how is he like? Which it's lending itself to be like he's some sort of supernatural being. How do you feel about that aspect of it? Like, he is literally getting like stabbed in every which way, even though they're not shooting him in the head, which is very dumb. And he's still surviving all of these things. Like, how do you feel about him as like a supernatural like being like that can't die?
They say the more he kills, the more he transcends, right? Like the more evil he becomes, the stronger he is. You can't kill the boogeyman.
Yes.
So, I mean, has he always been a supernatural entity, even when he was a child and killed his sister? Or
that's a good question.
I mean, he made it home in the 1978 film. And he goes out and attacks Laurie. Like he's hiding in the condemned house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he goes into other people's homes, like the drone couple and the woman who he stabs in the head when she like closes the window or whatever it was.
He's not taking a direct route to his.
He's a zigzagger. He's a zigzag walker.
You got to stop to smell the flowers,
I also think it's very interesting. So here's another thing that I totally forgot about before. One of the reasons why I love the 2018 one, again, this is so interesting talking to people who have seen all the other ones, because like, I'm just like, this is the only timeline I know. So in the 2018 one, what I really like about it, that I think it captures that the first one does, is the combination of like straight up scary terrifyingness of it mixed with the camp. Like the Loomis and all that is super campy in the first one. And then the doctor, they do the same thing in this one. The doctor in the second one is super campy. And the things that he's trying to do, they're like the contrast between like grounded and campy is so well done in those two movies. This one, to me, like loses a little bit of that camp. So when Michael like gets up from being shot a couple times, and then like some of these deaths are deeply gruesome, and all these people are talking like very seriously to each other. For me, it wasn't being cut with things that were campy, even though there's a mob screening Evil Dies Tonight, even though that some of these deaths were wild in Little John and Big John. It wasn't that same level of camp. Oh my God, I love Big John, Little John. It wasn't the same level of camp that the other ones have to like balance it out. So if there was that camp and he got up from the bullet wounds, I may have been like less, I may have thought about it less than if he did than him standing up from that, because I love the concept that like, I love the concept that other people may think of him as the boogeyman. So that's that fear. They're creating that aspect of the boogeyman that he gets, like Matt said, he gets stronger as he kills. I love that idea because the more that he kills, the more fear he instills in other people around him. So like his myth becomes larger. I think that's one of the most exciting things about Michael, that he's always there. You're like, he's always just like, even in the first one, she sees him in the classroom across the way. She sees him standing in places. The kids see him standing in places. It's like, it's symbolic of like that fear that's always kind of sitting on our shoulder. But in this one, it's actually chasing you and acting on you. And you try and get away from it, but you're tripping and falling because you're the one getting in your way of achieving your goal. And you're creating this thing that's behind you. And I think these movies do an excellent job of subconsciously setting that up. And I think this one like is missing the camp that allows for me to like buy into the rest of that, if that makes sense.
I like that read on it.
I'm going to sign off now. That's the smartest thing I can say.
Yes. Well, do you have any other thoughts about it? I mean, I hate that there wasn't like the whole doctor aspect of it too, because I think that in itself is something to discuss. The doctors wanting to have him go out and kill just for further research and things. But when it's like, no, we don't need a doctor. We have drones. So
I have a couple of questions. I liked that in the 2018 one, the 2018 was like really struck hard for me. The contrast between the brutality of Michael's killings and the romanticism of the podcasters. They're like spinning this yarn where it's like, Lori, tell us about what happened. Like, we're going to solve this. Isn't murder beautiful because it happened so long ago? Like, your hair is so gray and elegant, so much trauma. Tell us. And meanwhile, like Michael is dangerous. He murdered you. Like nobody escapes in this movie except for, like at the, like, it's really deeply disturbing. And I really like that combination of like, to me, it was like, we've heard the Michael story like for 40 years, all of us. And like, we're in love with these movies. We romanticize the campiness and whatnot. And I like that aspect of like that nostalgia for the first one, like aligning with our nostalgia for what the first one and what actually happened. And then like, they just destroy the podcast. I thought that was a really nice way of like shaking us up and be like, no, like this is, we're doing this.
Why don't you talk like that on this podcast?
So Lori's hair was just so.
I would say, don't you find that offensive as a podcaster?
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So they never say it outright, but Jamie, is Lori's daughter a therapist? Because in 2018, they say, I canceled my sessions for this afternoon. And she says cognitive behavior therapy, but they never outright say she's a therapist. Like, I guess like if your mom raises you that way with like basement shooting lessons, like you, like, I guess you tend to go towards like helping other people. Like,
well, also to that point, Brian, sorry, before Jamie answers, they also talk about, or the daughter talks about like why her mom like doesn't even want to do therapy at all. And she's like tried to get her to. So maybe that is a point, like she might be a therapist because she was trying to also get her mom into cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if she herself, I caught that too. I don't know if she herself is a therapist, but I can also imagine, given the trauma that Judy Greer's character goes through as a child with Laurie Strode as her mom, she herself has probably been to many a therapist and like is probably very familiar with treatment, just like having also taken on another level of PTSD, like trauma that her mom put on her. It's like this like Michael Myers like is, bringing trauma to everyone, not just directly, but like secondary trauma, tertiary trauma, like this generational trauma that's being passed down. So even if she herself isn't a mental health professional, which like everyone should be, but I'm sure she's like, familiar with the biz.
To that point, why do you think that Lori or someone in that position who has that kind of trauma would refuse therapy?
I mean, I think we see more of it in the second one of like her kind of making sense of like feeling like it's not just about her and that it's more of like he's just this evil entity killing whatever's in his way to his home. But I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why like people don't seek out therapy after a traumatic event. Like some people compartmentalize, they think in a very like adaptive way and are able to kind of like push things deep down and again, like think it's not affecting them. Other folks rely heavily on like their support systems, but that also sometimes can be like taxing on those support systems. When you hear about like really awful things from your friends and family, like sometimes that can be a lot to take on from somebody else. And so like someone could be like using their existing supports as a way to get some of that stuff out, and not necessarily recognizing how that could be impacting the people around them too. So like, I think also there's like, there's an element of like, at some point you're going to have to talk about what happened to you. And, as humans, we tend to avoid unpleasant, distressing things. So like, who wants to talk about trauma? But like, unfortunately, that's a lot of times how you work through the trauma. There's all these like new and fancy therapies. Like I got trained in eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is new and fancy and like less like, let's talk about everything that happened, and more like kind of does similar things with like when you go through REM sleep and like your the things that are happening in your brain, it like sets to kind of rewire some of that, because like trauma like messes with our brains and does a whole bunch of things to our brains, as we've talked about in like other episodes about like messing with our memory, and like we might recall information not in like a linear fashion. So there's like all of those things too can also affect somebody's willingness to want to seek a therapist. But yeah, you should, because therapy is great.
Therapy is great. I'm in cognitive behavioral therapy. I'll say it a million times over, and it changed my entire existence as a new person. Last thing on that, because I did have questions about this, but I wanted to just mainly focus on Halloween Kills. But in conjunction with everything that we're talking about with Laurie and how movies can exaggerate things for dramatical purposes, with Laurie's behavior being like she is a drinker, she can't be in public. It's like she has that fit when they're at the dinner table in the 2018 Halloween, and obviously like post-traumatic stress disorder, and she has a near-death experience. Like, is that behavior believable for someone who has experienced a near-death experience? Like Laurie?
Totally, yeah. Like when I mentioned people don't like to talk about or think about or like want to have anything to do with their trauma, like avoidance is a key. Avoidance is like a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder. Like we don't want to deal with it. So we're going to like do whatever we can to not deal with it. And sometimes avoidance can look like, using substances to cope, because like numbing yourself out feels more doable than like having to experience all of the things that the trauma brought out. So that's definitely believable. She's also like very on edge, super hypervigilant, like the way that her like behavior is actually portrayed in 2018, like very, very believable for someone who experienced a trauma.
Sorry that they were agoraphobic. Just for the listeners, can you describe what that is?
Yeah, that is a fear of going outside. Folks tend to become recluse, stay home. Like they will do whatever they can to be able to function and operate in the home without ever having to leave and go outside. Which is, like connected to anxiety and like, panic and all of that. All of those mental health concerns. So it definitely, again, like makes sense that like all of these things are connected. But I also imagine part of that is like amped up for the fact that like she's built this huge like safe house prison type compound. And so I'm sure that takes a lot of time, many years to construct a weird movable. I really want that movable island in my future kitchen home, like a safe house where I just like push that thing aside. And then also the blade door that comes out. That was cool.
Absolutely.
Do you think that Laurie also is resistant to getting mental help because she has been dismissed about her fear of Michael Myers because he's in prison? They keep saying he's in jail, he's not coming after you. And that she feels like she hasn't been heard for a long time as well. And that like, it's obviously compounded, like she's traumatized her daughter, who is upset at her for what she did to her as a child and instilled this kind of fear, but come to find out she was right all along. Because like she has not much trouble talking to her granddaughter who believes her.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like I think I talked about this in another episode too, just about like how support plays such a huge role in navigating mental illness and like the the likelihood of, successfully functioning with mental illness is increased like significantly if you have a really solid support system. So I can imagine that like this trauma that Laurie Strode has experienced is prolonged because like time and time again, she's being dismissed and told that like her experience, while valid, that like her ongoing like struggle with navigating it is like no longer valid after this period of time, that like it's less valid because he is hospitalized and not getting out, and like you're totally safe and you're overreacting and you're blowing this out of proportion, and like all of that is, all of that's naturally going to like want you to isolate yourself from other people. Like why would you put yourself in a situation where everybody's telling you that you're wrong, and then she's not, so like sucks for them, but yeah,
anyways.
Very true. But yeah,
Haddonfield
like
is
that.
a town of two, baby.
Oh man, yeah.
Grand.
I think we're seeing a new, a new generation of kind of slasher, if that makes any sense. So like in one of the earliest slashers, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was in 1974. And in this book, Men, Women, and Chainsaws, Gender in the Modern Horror Film by Carol Clover, she coined the term final girl.
Nice.
She talks about how the final girl in that movie, Sally, is all passive defense. She runs. She doesn't fight back. She just like books it the whole time. She survives. And then only 4 years later, we get Halloween, where Laurie Strode runs for a little bit, but then she turns and she goes on active defense.
Mm-hmm.
So she's resourceful with the knitting needle and the coat hanger, and she's like hiding and protecting herself. She survives. The Halloween in 2018 is the next step from active defense to active offense. Laurie Strode is ready. She chases Michael Myers. Like she's got traps. She's ready to take this guy on. And now this one, she's kind of removed from the situation temporarily. So we're seeing the town step in for her on an active offense, which is an interesting, like the frog leap from the 74 defense, passive defense. It's just like, it's interesting to like track the whole arc of the final girl survival strategies.
Well, do you feel like that is because of time and where we are and like how horror are, and do you also think like that offense type thing is what we're seeing in newer slasher movies? I mean, there's not a lot of newer hardcore slasher movies, but in that essence, like more people just trying to at least try and fight back.
Yeah. And especially if you look at it, like Brian was saying, if Michael Myers represents like the things that you fear, like primally, going on an active offense is kind of like getting help in a certain way. Like if you're facing your fears, if you're fighting back, like seeing a therapist and like having a support system and things like that is active offense for the things that you fear internally.
Yeah, that's great. Also, can you send us that book? Because that sounds...
For sure. Well, when she refers to modern horror, like Halloween is modern in this. So it's a little dated in the way that it talks about like gender identity and things like that. But it's definitely an interesting read, especially within the like 70s horror when slashers were really hitting.
Well, absolutely. I mean, like there's nothing new under the sun now. Like everything is, an amalgamation of, all the origin things. So that kind of is.
No. We recently watched one movie that definitely taught us something new, Malignant.
Are you talking about HBO Gabriel?
Oh yeah, HBO
Gabriel. Matt, I know I also asked you if you had any. Do you have any other thoughts or like mental health or human behavior type questions to bring to the table?
When I first started having this conversation, I said that this movie surprised me. What I was thinking about was the attacks on the Capitol and how a mob mentality makes people lose their humanity. And I saw that in this film. They made this film before that happened, but I could not help but see current events in that kind of mob mentality.
Sure.
That I didn't expect for that kind of horror.
So here's a question. Does that make a movie like this more effective or less effective because you're associating it with something real versus being able to like this being an escape for you?
I think it made it more effective for me. Otherwise, I would have just seen it as like, oh, this is a great homage to Halloween 4.
That's great.
It's so interesting that this was made before everything, because we also just saw the new Bond movie recently, and that was also made obviously before the pandemic. And there's an element of that you can't not think about what we've been through. And we talked about this, like a lot of TV shows now are incorporating what we've been through. So there's this big conversation about how you view your entertainment, and if you like seeing your life reflected, or if you like disassociating with it and just like being in a different world. So this is I think for years to come, this is going to be a fascinating conversation, both in terms of art and in terms of like absorbing the art around you.
Yeah, and I think especially in a horror is often reflective of the horrors that we experience as a society. And so I think that we will get a wave of not pandemic related horror per se, but like maybe isolation or like unseen enemies or things like that will translate in the next several years in the kind of horror that we're seeing come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else have anything? These movies are wild.
No, Evil dies tonight.
Guys, hashtag you can't kill the boogeyman. So.
Oh, I also liked from the 2018 one, I'm just looking at my notes here, when they said there's a reason we're supposed to be afraid of this night. I don't know if that's something that this series has said a lot in other movies, but I really like that. I think that that like really encapsulates for me why like this, yes, it's called Halloween, but I think that the movies associate like the fear of Halloween really well in these. And also that in like, I really like Trick or Treat. And I say that because like there's some movies are horror movies that you like, and some movies are just like Halloween horror movies, and like they hit differently. And so like I really like that sentence because it just like the fear of Halloween maybe has gone away because it's so commercial, and like we're dressing up as like Buzz and Woody and things like that, which are delightful. I love those two characters, but like I like being afraid on Halloween. No shade. Pixar, Disney is delightful. I like being afraid on Halloween, and I like that these movies tried to, bring the Halloween back to Halloween. I don't know. I'm trying to make something happen here, but you know what I mean.
Everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Well, speaking of tomatoes, let's do it.
All right.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
So I know that some of you may have seen these Rotten Tomatoes scores, but we're going to do the Rotten Tomatoes for all three. So I want you to guess what you think Halloween is, what you think Halloween 2018 is, and what you think Halloween Kills is. Let's start with the original. Let's go around. Percent. What do you think it has as of this recording on Monday, October 10th at 10:34 p.m. Eastern Standard Time? What do you think the Rotten Tomatoes score is on Halloween 1978?
I saw the score. I have to bow out.
Okay.
I'm going to say 83.
Jamie?
I'm going to say 87.
It is a 96.
Wow.
Whoa,
Good
that's
job,
so much
John.
higher.
Good job, John. Oh wait, do you think they called them Little John and Big John because of John Carpenter?
Oh, I hope so. I didn't even think of that.
I didn't either. No, I didn't either. Scary, suspenseful, and viscerally thrilling, Halloween set the standard for modern horror films. I think it's high because a lot of these reviews are not from 1978, are probably like looking back on that, but that doesn't matter. It's still that good. All right.
Wow.
Halloween 2018. What is the score?
I'm going to say 60%.
77. No, 78. We'll go with 78 because of the original.
Oh.
74.
Halloween 2018, according to Rotten Tomatoes, is the second highest rated Halloween movie, the first being Halloween, and it has a 79. So, Matt.
It was so close.
Wow.
Yeah. Halloween largely wipes the slate clean after decades of disappointing sequels, ignoring increasingly elaborate mythology in favor of basic yet still effective ingredients.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I buy that.
And what do we think Halloween Kills is?
Saw that score. Sorry.
I don't know if the score is the same because I think it changed. I accidentally saw multiple. So I'm going to guess now on this day because I think it's changed. Unless you just saw it right before we started.
I mean, I watched the movie last night and it was blaring on the Peacocks. So
yeah, when I watched it on Friday and the Rotten Tomato score was on the screen to play it, which I was bummed about because I knew I wasn't supposed to look. But my guess is that it probably went up.
That's what I think.
So what do we think it is? And then once we talk about that, to add some to this, I mentioned that the other two are 1 and 2. I'll ask you what ranking this is in all of the movies.
I think it's at a 48.
I'm going to say 55.
Ooh, I'm going to go 65.
Whoa.
It is rated a 39.
Oh,
down.
it dropped a lot.
Halloween Kills should satisfy fans in search of brute slasher thrills, but in terms of advancing the franchise, it's a bit less than the sum of its bloody parts.
Agreed. Rotten Tomatoes. Agreed.
Yeah. I actually think, Matt, what you said at the beginning of this episode really kind of like hit home for me, where the idea is like things happen and then we just kind of end up in the same place we did at the beginning of the episode, the beginning of the movie rather. And I think that these people agree with you. All right. So so number 1 is Halloween. Number 2 is Halloween 2018 at 39% of all 12 movies. Where do you think this Halloween Kills falls?
10.
I'm going to say 8.
9. I was trying to remember specific ones and where I feel like they rank.
So Halloween is 1 with 96. Halloween 2018 is 2nd with 79. Halloween H2O is 3 with 52%. And Halloween Kills is number 4 with 39%. There's a huge gap.
Whoa. Where do the Rob Zombie ones rank? Because those were the ones that I was putting last.
Sure. So So Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is 5. That's also at 39%.
It's had a huge cult resurgence.
I've seen so much of it on Instagram.
Yeah,
like people falling
for
it's the 3 masks that the kids are wearing.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting.
Wait, we'll say that again.
The trick-or-treaters that steal the candy from Big John and Little John are wearing the 3 masks from the Halloween 3 movie.
Oh,
the Halloween 3 movie is about a mask-making company.
Right. It's because that's when they decided they were going to make this an anthology series and then bailed on it. Yeah. Halloween 2 is 6 at 31%. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, which Matt referenced earlier, is at number 7 with 29%.
It's not great.
Rob Zombie Halloween is 8 at 28%. Halloween 2, the sequel to that one, is 9 at 22%. Number 10 at 12% is Halloween Resurrection. Number 11 at 12% is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. And holding up the end, the caboose of this Halloween trilogy, the world, is Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. I believe that is at a 9%.
Woof.
I don't believe I know.
The Curse of Michael Myers is the one where they actually make him supernatural.
Yeah,
he's got like a tattoo, a rune, something. There's a cult. It's like a whole thing. It like kind of ties into Season of the Witch with the stone circle, Stonehenge.
Weird.
It gets real messy.
Should I watch all of these as someone who has never seen anything other than the ones?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll watch them with you.
Okay, cool.
We're doing the S's. Tell us about the S's.
Skull, scares, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horns 4 S's.
So the 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. Skulls is about mental health, how this movie handles mental health and human behavior. Scares is how scary was it. Shakes is like, how much can you shake it off? Like, is it sticking with you? Is it not? And then suggestions, we want a suggestion from everybody.
And we're rating from 1 to 10.
Cool. Matt, you want to start with the skulls?
Yes. I gave it a 9.
Okay.
I think that the mob mentality really struck a chord with me way more than I expected. And that kind of gave me the weirdsies.
Cool.
The weirdsies. I love
the
that.
Weirdsies. So I couldn't get past the way that group of people riled each other up to kill an innocent person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Jamie.
I'm going to give it a 6 because they kind of take a lot away from Laurie, where I feel like the PTSD narrative really shines. And I think that the mob mentality kind of like takes the spotlight on that. But I think the way that everybody else is acting so foolishly has to just subtract a few points, because I just don't, it's really hard for me to believe that this is how people would actually be reacting in this situation.
Sure. Nikisha.
Yeah, I literally was thinking 6 as well for those reasons. And just them at least trying to incorporate like we're all saying, the townspeople's trauma. Because I wouldn't think that a movie would focus on the group as far as their trauma and how they're all handling it together. Yes, and all of those deaths were absolutely awful. People were literally just standing there and screaming the whole time. No one was actually even fighting, and that was so frustrating. So 6.
Oh man, I gave them way too much leeway for being horror movie characters. Like, of course, they're just going to stand there and scream. Duh.
I'm going with a 7. I think this movie brings up super interesting things. And I think in concept, I was like very into what they were doing. And to me, it loses points for what I said earlier, where it's like these people understand the stakes and then kind of act. This movie is predicated on the fact that people are going to, at least our main characters are going to, because of the first one, are going to act differently than they have in the past, and they don't. So maybe that's also an interesting thing, because maybe I'll give it a 7.5, because that's also interesting that they didn't learn anything and they're doing the same thing, even though they know the stakes are the same. So I'm going with a 7.5. I'm a wild man. Next up is scares. Matt, do you want to go with scares first?
Give it a 4. I didn't think it was scary. Also, it's hard for me to find a horror movie that actually scares me. Like the violence and stuff are just like, it's gross. No.
Does something, what movies do scare you? Like, does something that like is more like you can relate more to real life. Like if this whole thing was mob, would that have been scarier than like the murders, if that makes sense?
Conspiracy documentaries scare me a lot more than most horror movies.
Sure.
I actually watched a horror movie called Conspiracy that was like way too good of a fake conspiracy documentary, but like up until the very end when it turned culty, I was like, is this just a documentary? Yeah, the only moment in this movie that made me like wince a little bit is when he took the circular saw and bent it back onto the firefighter.
Sure. Cool. Jamie?
Yeah, didn't scare me.
Yeah, it wasn't really spooky or scary. I think I'd give it like a 3.5.
Nikisha?
I'm gonna give it a 5. But it's also because I like gore. So I want to give it points for the gore, but it wasn't necessarily like frightening. The only one that I was like, ooh, that was nice was the knife in the car to the doctor guy. And he like put a knife in his head. And I was like, oh.
In his eye area.
Mm-hmm. I was like, that's cool.
I gave this a 3. The only one that I winced at was the eyes. Was John, one of the Johns. Who's he?
I feel like you jumped. You jumped at one point.
Did I? I don't remember jumping. I mean, I probably did. I was a little.
When he puts his thumbs in his eyes.
Oh, that was pretty gruesome.
Yeah, not for me. 0 out of 10 would not do that again. Shakes. How much can you shake this movie? Will you be thinking about this movie? Is this like I watched it done? Like, give me the next one. I'm over this one. Like, where did you fall on that scale, 1 to 10? Matt?
I think right in the middle, a 5. I think I would not be opposed to watching it again. But like I said before, I would never choose it. The only thing that has left me continually thinking about is like I have continued to repeat the mob mentality.
Mm-hmm. Jamie?
Yeah, I think I'll give this a 4. Because I've been thinking about it. I mean, I've also been like listening to podcasts about it. So that's keeping it in my brain. But yeah, I don't think I think at some point pretty soon in the next week or so, I'll be able to shake it. Maybe when I start the premiere of Succession, I'll be able to shake it off. Because something else more terrifying and real will be occupying my brain.
Nikisha?
I'm going to give it a 2 because I honestly was like a little over it even while I was watching it. I was just kind of...
Oh, interesting.
Where is this going? Can it just end? I just want us to go on now. So.
I'm giving it a 5. I was going to give it lower, but this conversation changed my mind. I'm going to give it a 5. I think because of the mob conversation we had, the idea, like the conversation about like, is he like the idea with like he doesn't kill. They clearly make it a point that he doesn't kill those kids. Like I that conversation and while we're having, I'll definitely be thinking about this a little bit more than I thought I would after finishing it. So thank you, everyone. So suggestions. Let's go around the horn. What is everybody suggesting for this one? How are you wrapping this in Walmart in a 2-pack?
Yo, duh, with Halloween 4.
Yeah, that's a great one.
You got to watch the reference.
Yeah, I'm going to take that suggestion.
I have no suggestions. I'm bowing out. This just like pick up Halloween movie. Like just choose one. Watch it.
Should we put down H2O for you because it's number 3 on the Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah, it's the one next.
Work. That one for yes.
Jamie.
So I was thinking like what happens when mob mentality goes wrong, but then the consequences of their actions end up coming back to bite them. And so for that reason, I'm going with Nightmare on Elm Street, because of the parents coming together, mob mentality, killing Freddy Krueger because he allegedly molested children. I guess in the OG one, I can't remember if they like confirmed that or not. So that's kind of the reality that I'm going with of like, did this person actually do this thing that he's being accused of? But all of these people have kind of like taken up arms against him. And so that's I guess people can watch the new one too if they want, but like, no, just stick with the oldies.
Yeah.
I also thought maybe another mob mentality movie is the original Frankenstein.
That's a really good one too.
Yes. Put it on the list.
And then mine is I'm going with the new Candyman movie. Just the idea of retconning, the idea of trying to do something more contemporary with an older movie and kind of like trying to fit it into today's society and how we see things and our fears. Also, there's an idea of like trauma that's hereditary, trauma that's genetic in that. And I think they both handle it very similarly in being okay. But I think that it's really interesting. And I think it's a really interesting trend for horror movies to just like do something new with something we love and show it in a new light. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I'm definitely fascinated by it because I feel like horror movies now, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like horror movies now are more specific about what they're trying to be like an analogy for, or be, you know, like, or reflect in our lives. And by specific, I mean like maybe a little like super upfront about it as opposed to just being like a generic fear or something like that. So I'm going to go with Candyman. The Nia DaCosta new one.
Nice. Well, I think that wraps up our episode. Yes. We want to thank Matthew Woods for coming and joining us on this crazy fun ride. You can follow him at Hollow Woods on Instagram. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Go buy his art. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes. As for us, you can follow us on the Instagram, the Twitter, and now the TikToks.
Yeah, we did
We're Gen Z.
Horror Pod for all three of those platforms. Give us a follow, a like, a heart, whatever. Comment on all of our things, share our things, and you can listen to us where, Brian?
You can find us on things like Spotify, on Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Additionally, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Shouts out to those who have been rating and reviewing us. We appreciate you guys greatly. And Matthew, we always try to end with a quote from the movie. So I'm going to let you pick your favorite quote from Halloween Kills to sign us off on today.
I think I have to go with the classic when the sheriff reiterates, everyone's entitled to one good scare.
Yes. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Thank you.